Hello everybody. Today I'd like to take a look at the all-black Atari 2600, affectionately known as the Vader, and compare it to the wood grain 4-port system, also just called the video computer system. And while we're at it, I'd like to play a couple of unique titles for the 2600. These are arcade ports by Sega, published by Sega. I am Sean, this is Locke, and you're watching 300 Baud. With that, let's get started. Let's start with a comparison of the two cases. From the top, they look nearly identical, except you'll notice this has the Atari 2600 branding on the left, where on the original 4-port, we've got just the Atari logo. Both of them say Video Computer System on the top bezel. One of the main differences here is the Vader system does not have the orange paint that you'll find on the 4-port wood grain system. Another difference is on the 4-port system, you've got this beautiful wood grain, and it's just paint, it's not wood, but the top of the wood grain is smooth. On the Vader system, they've actually got some texture on here, so this is a little bit rough when you touch it. It's very similar to what you find on the vents. They aren't real vents, but they look like vents. So, but the very front of the bezel is smooth. You can see I've got that shiny black plastic. Another difference between the two, on the wood grain model, I've got the difficulty switch, and it just says difficulty, and it has A and B. On the Vader system, it also has the difficulty switch in the exact same location, except it says difficulty A, and under A it has expert, and B, and under the B it says novice. So other than that, the tops appear to be pretty much identical. Now the bottom of the cases, they're both the same. They're pretty much identical on the bottom. You're not going to find any differences. So let's go ahead and crack them open and take a look at the motherboards. So this is the motherboard that came out of the wood grain 4-port system, and this one is a revision 14. It's got copyright 1980 on it, and a date code of 11 April 1980 something. It's probably 1982. I can't really tell. The layout of this board and my Vader system are nearly identical, but there are some subtle differences. The first thing to point out is the location of the RF port is actually on the left of the wood grain system. On the Vader, it's going to be located on the right. Another thing that I've noticed is that the leads on the version 14 board, or the wood grain system, they're pretty low quality. So especially if you look at the back, they almost look like aluminum foil that's been glued down. I'm not exactly sure how this was manufactured, but I do know that it's very easy to damage this board. And also notice that it's got some kind of like grungy, dirty stuff along here. Possibly it got wet. I kind of doubt it. I don't know. That is pretty much it for this board. Now moving over to the Vader board, what we've got here is a revision 16 motherboard. It's also copyright 1980. You will notice that the position of the RF has moved over a little bit. There are some differences in the leads themselves. They are thicker. They seem to be thicker on this board, especially when I look at the back. We do have some of that kind of like peeling look, but overall they are thicker leads. They still don't look like they're extremely expensive, but definitely better than on the revision 14 board. So here's my Vader 2600 set up with my two Sega published games, and what the heck, I might as well throw Frogger in there for good measure since I already had it out. Although that one's published by Parker Brothers, but it is a Sega arcade translation. So TechScan uses the paddle controllers, and conveniently they use the right-hand port, not the left-hand port, and Congo Bongo is a joystick-based game. So let's go ahead and turn this thing on and see what we've got. So here's Congo Bongo. Now, with the 2600, in my opinion, some games just should have never been made. And this is probably one of those examples. The 2600's graphics capabilities are very, very primitive, and Congo Bongo is a game that actually really pushed graphics. It was probably not such a fun game as more of a technically impressive game. You'll notice that it actually does capture the board, and I can tell that is a monkey character at the top, and I can also tell that my character is a little safari guy, and I can, you can kind of tell that those are coconuts coming down, and we've got the river. So there's a lot of elements that are here that, okay. Now, one thing I did notice when I was playing around with this Atari, trying to get cartridges to work, is that this particular unit doesn't have the integrated dust cover, which is right inside of here. Notice the prongs on this 2600. On the inside, these inner prongs are intended to open dust covers that are found on the inside of your older Atari 2600 games. It basically just goes inside this hole, which releases a latch and allows this dust cover to open. The holes here are intended, the cartridges themselves, they have prongs. Those prongs go down inside these holes and open up a dust cover. Now this particular 2600, this is the Vader one, came out around 1982. It does not have that dust cover in there, so it does allow dust to get in there. So I've been having some issues with getting games to fire up on this particular 2600. Real easy problem to fix. All you got to do is get some cleaner inside there and clean it. Now it is a narrow passage, so like a Q-tip isn't going to fit, but maybe like an emery board covered with a lint-free cloth with some alcohol would do the trick. So other than that, let's go ahead and get started and play some games. So back to Congo Bongo. So I haven't played this game ever. I maybe played it like for 15-20 seconds, but I've never actually played it on the 2600. So the 2600, like many of the versions at the time, they only had 2 levels. It doesn't take much to master this game. As a matter of fact, I just finished the first level. So we're on to the second level. Now this doesn't have the same isometric view that you'd find in the arcade. Another thing is the detection of where you land is really, really bad on this game. So it's really difficult to control it. But the cool thing is I can kind of tell we got some lily pads. I think those are hippos. These are supposed to be fish, and I'm jumping on now. And at the very top, I've got some rhinos. Now for the Atari 2600, this is actually an impressive game. I mean, you've got some waves going on in there and multiple creatures on the screen. So I just finished that second level, and now I'm taking revenge on the monkey for burning my tent. So I burned the monkey. Now that's a pretty horrific scene. That's Congo Bongo, folks. So imagine paying $60 for this game. Hard to imagine, but yeah, you get about 2.5, 3 minutes of gameplay. So I'm done with Congo Bongo. So now we'll try a little tack scan. This game translates very well to the Atari 2600. The arcade used rotary, and on the 2600 you play with the paddles. Now the arcade you have 7 ships, and this one you have 5. The arcade has a top-down view like you see here. It also has a third-person perspective view, so it like has 2 different modes, and I believe there's tunnels in the arcade where you don't have that on here. But the gameplay is pretty good, and the paddle controllers make it a bit more interesting to play. These flashing white ships, if you get those, that earns you an additional backup ship. And I think if you shoot 3 ships at a time, it does the same thing, but I'm not exactly sure. But what ends up happening here is you can lose ships, and you can have ships in backup, and then you'll regenerate those ships, which is it makes for an interesting gameplay, kind of like Missile Command, how you can earn bases back through scoring high enough. What I do like about this particular game on the 2600 is the unique control and the high speed. It does make for a pretty good game. So if you get a chance to pick up TaxScan, I definitely recommend it. Don't think I'd recommend Congo Bongo. Let's go ahead and just enjoy the game for a little bit. So TaxScan is, in my opinion, pure Atari. It's fast, it's ruthless, it just keeps getting faster and faster. The only point of playing the game is to get a higher and higher score, and usually the games would last no more than a few minutes. This is pure Atari, and I love it. So that pretty much completes this review on the Vader 2600. It doesn't really do anything more than any other Atari out there, but it just has a unique look. I was thinking about converting this guy to composite, and I looked up the values. Turns out the Vader systems sell for quite a bit. I mean, actually, it was selling for almost as much as a Heavy Sixer, which to me is crazy because the Heavy Sixer is pretty rare because they only made those for the first couple of years, where the Vader was a cost-reduced system. But I think the Atari 2600 Junior followed shortly after the release of the Vader, so they just may not have made very many Vaders, so there might not be very many of them left. Anyhow, that wraps it up for this video. If you enjoy this type of content, please consider subscribing, and I will be back with some more videos. Until then, take care of yourself, and goodbye.